the name of my talk today is Inexorable Gratitude. And I kind of feel that way in this moment, like unending gratitude, unstoppable gratitude for just the incredible gift of being together today and having John with us and the whole team. Just beautiful. Um, so I've been studying the writings and the work of Brother David Stindl Rast, who is a Benedictine monk. So a lot of what I'm going to speak to you about today really arises out of the insights that I've been hearing from him as I've been listening to his work over the last week or so. And one of the things that resonated with me most, or one of the things that I think is most important for us to kind of get in this time, the series that we're talking about is Spiritual Tools in Fraught Times, and gratitude, this idea that an unending gratitude is a way for us to move through it from a place of strength and power, I think is beautiful. And what I'm kind of aware of is that gratitude, it comes in a lot of flavors and a lot of levels, right? There's a kind of surface level gratitude that arises when, something wonderful happens for us, and there's a sense of happiness and brightness and lightness that comes alive in us. And it really is a reaction to whatever the experience is in the moment, right? So it's it's certainly wonderful energy to bring forth, but it's not the kind of sustainable, deep gratitude because it's dependent on that outer circumstance that we really need to move through fraught times, right? So there's a deeper level of gratitude that I want us to begin to delve into. The metaphor, the image that Brother David uses for it is a fountain. And he says what happens, he says, okay, I'm going to back up a minute. I'm going to give you sort of three. He says gratitude, there's not enough shades of that in our language. We need to be able to articulate more specifically which type of gratitude our hearts and minds might be engaged in. And so he proposes three. The first is sort of thanksgiving, he calls it. The second is gratitude. And then the third, he says, is gratefulness, a state of being, gratefulness. So what I just talked about with being happy because somebody gives us a present, or being happy because somebody buys us dinner, or being happy because it's a pretty day out, that arises out of a circumstance, that he would say is thanksgiving. There's a level of celebration and joyfulness that kind of rises up, and we're happy in that moment. And that's wonderful. He says the next piece is gratitude. The next level of that would just be gratitude. And so go back to this fountain, right? And so somebody's given us something, and the fountain starts to fill. There's a bowl at the top of a fountain, and it starts to fill up a little bit, right? Gratitude is when it gets beyond being a reaction or response to an outer experience, and there's a welling up that happens. Our heart starts to swell. There's a feeling that all is well. It's a more expansive kind of feeling. Hopefully you can kind of relate to that. And what Brother David said is that starts to fill up the bowl, right? As our hearts start to swell, our hearts start to fill up, the top bowl in that fountain starts to fill up. He says the trick is that for a lot of people, most of us in the consumer kind of culture though, what happens is that it starts to fill and it gets up to the top of the bowl and it's just about to pour over, that he says advertisement is the word he uses. Something clicks in and we realize that, I'm really happy about my iPhone 9, but I want the iPhone 10. It's not enough. We make the bowl bigger and we never get to that point of being overflowing with gratefulness, right? Because there's that in our mind that there's more, there's something better, my neighbor's got a bigger one. There's that place where we don't really allow ourselves to move into that space that he would call gratefulness. That gratefulness is when actually it overflows the edges and, cup runneth over kind of energy. And we really come at that from a space of knowing that all is well. It's a state of being, and it's no longer dependent on an outer circumstance. It's something that arises up from in us. What David says is that, for many of us, or for many folks, they think about it's easy to be grateful if we're happy. So it's happy people that are grateful. Brother David said it's the other way around. It's grateful people who are happy, right? We all know people who have tons of stuff, and looking at the circumstances of their lives, you'd think that they would be fulfilled and happy. But we know there are people who aren't. They don't have that level of gratitude that sort of moves them through the challenges. And at the other end of the spectrum, we all know people who, if you look at their circumstances, we can't, we would judge it to be just full of challenge and pain. And yet their approach to life is completely positive. They come at it from the space of inner joyfulness and gratitude. They're living from not just gratitude, but the gratefulness, the level of this capacity that Brother David would call gratefulness. So I want to talk a little bit about how we move into that space of gratefulness, because that's what's most beneficial for us to be able to stand in these challenging times and create a positive attitude. See, it's a choice. At that point, it's a choice. Gratitude doesn't just arise out of a reaction because something makes us happy. Gratefulness arises because we choose to focus on the good piece of it. Now, before I go too much farther, I also want to sort of put in this little caveat, because there are certainly times in our lives when moving to gratefulness or gratitude or happiness too quickly is actually harmful, right? There are times when it's appropriate that we feel fearful or anxious or have that anxiety. So gratefulness, Brother David says, is a state of being where we can allow that to be. We're present to what's going on for us in that current moment, but we're not coming out of fear from it. We're not coming out of lack from it, because we have this greater kind of picture and understanding and can be grateful for the source of all supply, the source of all freedom, the source of all goodness and love that we know underlies whatever the circumstance is. So gratefulness is a process, right? There are times in your life where we're in my life too, where I'm not going to be able to claim gratefulness and gratitude and claim the good in that particular moment, right? I'm not going to be experiencing that. That doesn't mean that I still can't have the joy that arises from gratefulness. I can have both. I can be in a space of dealing with the emotional human process of healing and growth and understanding, and also come from a state of being that arises out of gratefulness. Yeah? So that's not to say that, I think sometimes in unity we think that, we say a couple affirmations about being grateful and that's going to do it. That's going to generate the level of energy that moves us into that transformational space of gratitude. Sometimes it's a process, and that's okay. So if you're not feeling that level of overflowing gratitude where it's extended out of the bowl and just sparkling and shining and making this wonderful splashing noise, if you're not feeling that, it's okay. It's part of a deeper and broader process. Yeah. So here's some suggestions. Personal example. So I went last week after service, I went to Michigan to visit with my mom and celebrate my sister's birthday, and got up. My intention was to be there Sunday night. It was going to be a quick trip back Monday to work on stuff. Well, at my mom's house, I got there and it turned out that there was they put down some paper towel around the base of the toilet in the bathroom because there was a leak. And I thought, okay, I'm here. I know how to fix that little wax ring. It's a simple fix. I dash off to Home Depot. I can do that. And before Mom even gets up, the fix will be done and I'll be on my way back. Well, it wasn't that easy. When I went to make the fix, found that there was a lot more trouble than that. There was some rotting in the floor, and the flange and the base and all that stuff wasn't right. It was just, and what we had learned is that a couple of years back when she had new flooring put in, the installers put it right over all this rotted wood. So for the last 2 years, there's been this building, you can watch. So I'm sitting there sort of looking at this floor that we know we're going to have to cut out, wondering, okay, what's to be grateful about this? How is this a space to be grateful about? I'm holding some judgment about the installers who, in my view, did it wrong, right? There's all this. But what I came to understand over the course of the time is that I haven't been there for a long, long time, but I have a big family. We have an extended family on both sides with all kinds of connections. And as difficult as it is to get a contractor in on an overnight kind of thing like that, by reaching out to family who had deep connections with lots of people, we were able to track down, he was a retired contractor. He was literally on his way to leave for 2 weeks to take his grandkids up north. But because of his deep connection and relationship to my cousin, he was willing to come in and help us out with this, right? So suddenly I'm grateful for the connections of family. Suddenly I'm grateful to this stranger who's willing to give up a chunk of his vacation. And he was taking calls from his grandkids all day as it turned out to be a bigger job. And so we end up like having this wonderful experience of the depth of connection that happens beyond that. We're going to do some other remodeling that upgrades it and makes a more accessible and more usable room for my mom right now. And that all arose out of, so there are places where in that moment we might not feel grateful or see what the blessing might be. But as we trust that there's a bigger picture and start to do the work that's ours to do, come from a space of knowing that the source is going to provide what's needed for this, we can live from that space of gratitude, and it actually allows it, because it's a state of being, it allows it to express in ways that we might not have fully understood before. So I want to share a biblical example as well. This is one that I really appreciate a lot because it comes out of an awareness that there's greater good beyond the current blessing, right? So in the Bible, there's the story of Hannah and Samuel and Eli. So Hannah was, she had been married for a number of years, and her husband, you know, this is the Old Testament days, so her husband had another wife who was giving him all kinds of children. And so Hannah, as she was barren, was just moving through a lot of challenge and a lot of time. And finally, she broke down at a big celebration. She was out sort of praying to God and pouring out her heart and really making a pledge that if she could bear a child, if she could bear a male child to carry on the family name, that she would be so incredibly grateful that she would give the child to the priest to raise, so that he would be brought up in the house of God. And the priest overheard her and blessed her request. He didn't, wait, no, the priest didn't overhear her. He saw her lips moving. He couldn't hear what the prayer was, but he blessed it so that the prayer would come true. And sure enough, a few months later, she was with child, and she bore a son. She named the son Samuel. No, I'm sorry, she named the son Samuel. And so for about, well, how long does it take to wean a child? I don't know, a year, 2 years, something like that. Her commitment was once the child was weaned, that she would take him and give him to the priest to raise. And so when that day came, you can imagine what might have been in her heart, right? This child that she had suckled at her breast now for 2 years, that she had been hoping and praying for decades, and she was now turning him over. And yet the prayer that she shares at that point betrays the fact that she has made a choice to come out of gratitude, not as a sense of loss, that this hope was fulfilled, not of the sense that she won't be there for this child as he grows up. But the prayer, I want to share just a couple of stanzas of the prayer with you. This is from 1 Samuel chapter 2. Hannah prayed and said, "My heart exalts in the Lord. My strength is exalted in my God. My mouth derides my enemies, because I rejoice in my victory. There is no holy one like the Lord, no one besides you. There is no rock like our God." So it comes from a place out of total praise, out of total appreciation for all that she has been given. And what we know about that is that when we can move into those spaces in our own lives, when we're facing challenges or spaces where we might be tempted to be caught up in the emotionality of it, the anxiety of it, the fear, the lack, and the loss, is that's a choice point. We can choose to be grateful. We can choose to see the bigger picture and to know that beyond this singular experience, Hannah in this case had been blessed. She had given birth. She had borne the son that she and her husband had wanted so much, right? And of course, as the story goes on, as we know that as we are grateful, as we come from that space of grateful, greater good comes into our life and our experience. And so they were blessed with 3 more sons. So that's Hannah's story. And Samuel was raised by Eli, the prophet Eli. So I want to go back to David, brother David. When he was asked by, I was listening to a Krista Tippett recording on her program On Being with him. And she always goes a little bit further than you hear him when he's talking in his TED Talks or in some of the writings. And she asked him, okay, let's get personal. So brother David, what about when you move into that space? When gratitude isn't the first emotional reaction or response that you have, how do you move through that? How do you deal with that? And he said, first of all, is that he remembers that there's a greater good, there's a bigger picture, right? That God is great and God is good, and he has moved through other challenges in his life to this point. And so that moves into a space that is outside the realm of sort of fear and anxiety. He believes that gratitude or gratefulness is transformative because when we're in gratefulness and gratitude, we're not in fear. And when we're not in fear, we're not prone to starting up violence or being defensive or attacking, right? When we're in gratitude, it sort of transforms any of the energy we would have that might otherwise be directed toward negative or unfruitful behaviors. And he said the same is true about lack. When we're in gratitude, when we're appreciating what we have, we're not coming out of lack or the anxiety that there won't be enough. And our hearts are full enough that we recognize the abundance of what is, and we can begin to share. It completely changes how we show up. That's why he uses gratefulness as the state of being, right? So that's where we want to move into. He says when he has trouble doing that, it comes back to the simplest, most basic piece. And he has an analogy that he uses, that when we were children learning to cross the street, when we came up to the street, we would stop, we would look, and then we would go. So he suggests the same thing for us. When we're moving into a space and we can feel that anxiety rising and that where fear begins to take over, that we stop and look around, stop and be present to what is. And he says for him, in the deepest kind of wilderness that he's moving through, for him, what he notices is breath. Realizing that breath is this incredible gift that we don't earn. We aren't assured of it. We're not guaranteed that we will take the next breath. Spirit breathes through us. Spiritos is the word that he uses. It breathes through us. And so as we return to attention and our attention about the gift of breath, and the opportunity there is to know a blessing that arises out of whatever this is, that we move into a space where we can, even if we're not happy in that moment, even if there's some sadness or sense of loss, there is that deeper sense of gratefulness and assurance that truly all is provided, and that in God all that is emerges in greater measure, even greater measure. So that's his piece. Stop, notice what's around, because most of us are rushing so fast through life that we don't see the opportunities sometimes. And listen for what that opportunity might be. And it might be the opportunity to learn. It might be the opportunity to recognize or remember that, okay, this is not a choice I want to make next time around. There's always opportunity in there. It might be the opportunity to bring forth some new creative idea that's not been expressed before. So stop, listen for what opportunity might be available and presented, and then go, right? The piece of it for implementation is we take action on that. Our gratitude gets expressed most generously when we're giving to others out of our own sense of fulfillment and abundance, right? Back to that fountain that's overflowing and spilling over and letting us just immerse ourselves in the wonderful and the glory and the sparkliness that truly is the essence of the goodness of God. So what we'd like to do now, we're shaking things up a little bit. John is a master meditator, as you've already heard. So I've asked him if he will lead us into a time of meditations as we begin to open ourselves to any ideas that you might have about how you might express gratitude, about how you're experiencing it. And John's going to lead us into that space.
Thank you, Reverend Kurt. It's powerful. Go ahead and get comfortable if you would. I invite you to open your heart, close your eyes, and just feel into this present moment. As we stop, we're going to look deeply within. We can look both ways, within and without. And just notice what you're feeling, what you're sensing. As you breathe and relax. And let's take 3 deep breaths together. In. Sigh it out. In. Sigh it out. in. Sigh it out. Just breathe normally. Just feel into what is arising for you. Breathing and relaxing. Go ahead to bring to mind anything you'd like to bring to mind that you can give thanks for right now. Maybe there's multiple things. I want you to feel into that heart space of gratitude. Maybe you feel it all over your body, but feel those frequencies and vibrations of gratefulness. As you breathe, you relax, you give thanks. Even thanks for this moment to even feel grateful. Perhaps thankfulness for what you've received today and the message, the reminder that we can choose to create a state of gratefulness now. And now I want you to embody it through vibration and actually tone, maybe through humming. If you're alone, you can ooh and ah as loud as you like, but I want you to simply tone Thanksgiving. What does it feel like for you in this moment? And I'll join with you as we tone our Thanksgiving for everything that comes up for us that we can give thanks for in this moment. Oh, yeah. Ooh. Hey. Bring to mind all that you're grateful for. Ooh, and tone it. Ooh, lifting your voice with thanksgiving. Ooh, hey. And we give thanks for all that we are, exploring and knowing ourselves more deeply, remembering together right now. Oh, oh, take a deep breath. And just let go and feel into this moment as we enter a moment of silence. Take a breath. Let it out. Namaste.
Hey, thanks for watching this YouTube video. If Unity's message of positive spiritual living resonates with you, I hope you'll subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date on other lessons as we post them. Also, if you're able to support us financially in the work that we do in the world, please check below for contact information. You can visit our website, find more about what programming we offer, as well as how to give. Blessings.